Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Kara Keenan Sweeney. I'm here today to talk with you about MBA programs you should consider if you're interested in pursuing consulting as a career. So, thank you so much for joining us. Just to let you know how today's session will go, we will cover the presentation briefly for maybe 10 minutes or so, and then I'll try to answer as many of your questions as possible. I have over 15 years of admissions committee experience at some of the world's top MBA programs, including Columbia Business School, the Lauder program at Wharton. I also worked at INSEAD and Penn State for a bit. And then after leaving education, I worked briefly for a time as a campus recruiter at McKinsey and Company. So hopefully some of those insights will be helpful to you as we talk through the presentation. So why is an MBA a good idea if you're interested in pursuing consulting? I'm sure many of you are thinking about consulting as a career, and MBA is a logical choice. So many people are interested in consulting and coming to an MBA to pivot into consulting. And just some sort of obvious reasons that I'm sure you're already thinking about, but essentially you have access to top consulting firms. All the top consulting firms will recruit through MBA programs. So that's an important thing to consider in terms of career sport and clubs. You'll definitely want to make sure to pursue an MBA program that will offer you access to both. An MBA program can give you an excellent opportunity to develop strategic thinking and leadership skills through your academic work, through clubs, through other activities. One of the most important things I'm sure you're aware of is through the interview component for consulting is case preparation. So MBAs provide a great environment for you to work on case prep through, again, consulting clubs, through career services. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is through your professional network. Many of your classmates, your future classmates, will be coming from the consulting world. And that's a great resource as you go to look to interview, to recruit, to polish your resume, to do all the things that you need to do in order to recruit for consulting. Your fellow classmates and the alumni network from the MBA program that you attend can be a great resource for you. Okay, so these are just some of the top programs to consider. And I want to add a caveat that when I was a recruiter for McKinsey, we really recruited way beyond this list into the top 20, 25 programs, and even beyond that, to be candid. So if you end up at a smaller program, at maybe a program that isn't necessarily ranked in the top 7 or 8 programs, don't think that that precludes you from pursuing consulting opportunities with top firms. And also, I encourage you to think beyond McKinsey, Bain, and BCG, which are obviously amazing organizations, but there's so many other consulting firms as well. So just to add the caveat that these are great MBA programs and MBB are amazing to work for, but you have lots of opportunities beyond those as well. Having said that, we will talk through these 8 programs, which based on what I took a look at is the class of 2023 career report, which MBA programs graduated the largest number percentage-wise of their graduates into consulting. So we'll start with INSEAD. I'm sure many of you are aware that INSEAD hires or is the largest number of consultants are hired out of INSEAD annually. It's an amazing program if you're looking at maybe having an international career or you're looking for a non-US international MBA program. The nice thing about INSEAD is it's incredibly global, known as the business school for the world. No more than 10% of their student body comes from any given country. So incredibly international. Of course, they have a footprint across Europe and Asia with their 2 main campuses based in Fontainebleau in France and Singapore. Incredibly high placement into consulting at 44%. And another nice advantage of INSEAD is that the program, depending on whether you do the 10-month program or the 12-month program, you're done within a year. So a lot of candidates actually are coming from consulting, going to INSEAD, and then graduating and returning back into consulting. So that accounts for a large percentage. But having said that, as I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in consulting, INSEAD can be a great choice because they absolutely have great relationships with the consulting companies, being so many of their students are coming from consulting. And you have amazing access to your classmates in terms of their own knowledge base and recruiting for consulting. So if you're thinking about an international program, perhaps you'd like to work in Europe or Asia or really anywhere in the world, INSEAD could be a great choice for consulting. Next, back in the US, we have Northwestern, Kellogg's program. Obviously, Kellogg has an incredibly strong reputation, very strong industry relationships, including consulting and beyond. Kellogg is known for the distinctive collaborative and team-oriented culture, which can be really important as you pursue consulting. As I'm sure you're thinking about consulting, so much of the work that you do is team-based. So working in a really collaborative and team-based culture at Kellogg can be really helpful as you pursue and think about and doing the work of consulting itself. And then Kellogg also offers you specialized consulting programs and resources, certainly close relationships with the firms, and will do a great job at preparing you for the interview process. 42% of their class of 2023 went into consulting roles, so a great indication as to how strong their representation is there. Moving over to their neighbor in Chicago at Booth. Booth is known for its analytical rigor, which is, again, also very important as you think about the consulting work and the work that you'll do. Having to analyze company problems, company issues, certainly important as you work through cases. They have excellent placement in consulting at 38% of the class. And a nice thing about Booth is that you have a flexible curriculum. So if you're thinking about consulting and you're not exactly sure which industry you might like to align with or what area you might like, practice area you would like to focus in, having the opportunity to study multiple disciplines, multiple areas, industries can be really helpful. So Booth could be a great choice for you if you're sort of, thinking about exploring different areas you're interested in. Columbia Business School, it was amazing working at Columbia back around 2010 and before then, where I worked for the full-time MBA and executive MBA program. Columbia, they call themselves they're at the very heart of business, and that is absolutely true, being that they're based in New York City. They have incredibly strong relationships with consulting companies due to their proximity. When I worked at McKinsey, I would say the largest number of consultants were hired into the New York City office, generally speaking, because it is the largest office, unsurprisingly. So Columbia's proximity to the major consulting companies and to their headquarters is an amazing thing to have when you're right there in New York City. Very strong alumni network, very strong alumni connections, strong recruiting through Columbia, of course. And there's certainly known for the rigorous curriculum and consulting specific resources. So if you're looking at being in New York City and you're thinking about consulting, Columbia is an obvious choice. Okay, so in our top 5, rounding out our top 5 is MIT Sloan. I know our recruiters at McKinsey were amazing who recruited our colleagues coming from Sloan. Incredibly world-class reputation for innovation and problem solving, which of course is incredibly important as you work as a consultant. Again, just like the other programs, very strong relationships with top consulting firms, excellent networking opportunities. And MIT is known for their collaborative culture and action learning, which is also really important. So as you think about some of these programs, think about not just the relationships with the consulting companies, consulting clubs, opportunities to do case preparation, those sort of kind of obvious things that you might be thinking about. Think also about the environment, the culture of the school, and what the what sort of learning opportunities you'll have through that culture. So a team-based collaborative culture can be really helpful as you look to brush up on your skills in that regard for consulting, and also the opportunity to orient your studies academically to consulting, focusing on leadership, analytical work, things of that nature. So Sloan is certainly a great choice. So in the class of 2023, these were the top 5 programs I found hiring the largest number of students going into consulting. But of course, we can't forget Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton. So when I worked at McKinsey, I was aligned to the Wharton School. I'm based out of our Philadelphia office. We had an amazing relationship with Wharton. They have an awesome career management team. And of course, if you attend Wharton, you will have access to networking with all of the top firms, MBB and beyond. So very strong relationships with all of the consulting companies. Of course, is focused in strategy and analytics, as I mentioned, thinking about what academic opportunities you will have. Wharton allows, I think, at least 6 electives, and you can also make your own major at Wharton, which can be really helpful as you think about maybe transition to consulting. How can you shape your studies to really help you brush up on certain skills for consulting work? In addition to the academics and career management, Wharton had an awesome consulting club, and we worked really closely with a consulting club when I was at McKinsey. So knowing you'll have the opportunity to be a part of that club for case preparation, which is so important, also for networking opportunities, and to learn from second year students who have gone through the recruiting process and completed an internship perhaps for consulting as well. Harvard, of course, very strong reputation, global brand reputation with consulting firms. One of the advantages for Harvard, of course, is the distinctive case method that they root their curriculum in, which is, of course, incredibly helpful as you go through the recruiting process for consulting. In addition, a very prestigious alumni network, whether it's for Harvard or other MBA programs. What I would encourage you to do is to go onto LinkedIn, look at some of the companies that you're interested in, and do a little bit of a dive into where their employees have graduated from in terms of their MBA. I'm sure you'll see Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, but look beyond even the top 5, 10 programs. Again, sort of speaking to my earlier point that opportunities to recruit for consulting exist beyond the top 5 or 10 schools. So take a look and see where else have folks come from who are working at some of these consulting firms. And sorry, last but not least is Stanford. So Stanford has a smaller number of graduates going into consulting every year, but having said that, still a good number of folks who are interested in consulting. Of course, a lot of their graduates are going into VC, innovation, tech, things like that. But that can really help you if you're interested in consulting in those industries. Stanford is certainly an excellent choice. If you're interested in being based on the West Coast professionally, having access to their network. And although Stanford is certainly known for its strong reputation and work across the region in the Bay Area and beyond, there is certainly an emphasis on global impact, which is also very important in consulting. So many of the projects and work that you'll do will have a global footprint and global reach, and you'll find yourself traveling around the world very often. So Stanford is obviously an excellent choice, whether it's consulting or another area you're interested in. So what are some of the things that you should be looking for as you consider MBA programs? The first thing I would encourage you to do is to go onto the websites of the programs that you're interested in and download the career report. That will be the best place to start to find out not just what their outcomes are for consulting, but all of the other industries that you might be interested in. Take a look at where their graduates went to work geographically, what the average salaries were. And again, as I mentioned, beyond McKinsey, Bain, and BCG, take a look at the other organizations that have hired consultants through their MBA program. That is a great place to start. So much of the important information you can learn about a program, it's such an obvious thing, is on their website. Taking a look at their class profile, taking a look at their career reports, where the students have come from before the MBA and where they go after is the best place to start in terms of gathering your data. This program maybe a right fit for me? Will I get the opportunities I need to pursue consulting as a career? In addition, you certainly want to look for programs that have really strong consulting clubs and academic opportunities that will help you, again, sort of orient your studies to consulting. And then lastly, as I mentioned, having access to a really strong alumni and student network in consulting, students who have come from consulting who are now in the MBA programs you're interested in, and then the alumni network. Again, maybe taking a look at LinkedIn and seeing where's their alumni network based, or where are they coming from? That could be a really strong indicator as to the programs you might want to consider. So taking a little bit of a dive into some of these things that you'll want to think about, career services support is really, really important. The main relationships from the consulting firms will be with career services, and almost all of them, I can't really think of a top MBA program that wouldn't give you access to consulting companies, but you'll want to take a look at that. What is that like? What does that feel like for current students and alums? Talking maybe with some current students and alums from the program. What was it like going through career services? How was the support? Did you find they were helpful? Did you get additional support? So those are things to be thinking about, how the strength and the rigor of the career services support that you'll get through your MBA program. Making sure you have access to interview prep and workshops, incredibly important. Networking and recruiting events. You could, in some cases, you may even find information online about the number of events that are taking place, what kinds of networking events are the consulting companies coming to campus, what's the relationship like in terms of actually meeting maybe recruiters in person, is it virtual, how does career services help you with navigating those relationships, and that process is really important. We talked about downloading the career report, again, just to emphasize that, taking a look at where people went to work, what the salary and locations were. From most of the main consulting companies, and certainly I can speak for McKinsey, we recruited interns and graduates to work all over the world. So if you're thinking about consulting and you want to be based in New York, great, but maybe you want to be based in your home country or another part of the world, and you most likely have those opportunities recruiting for consulting as well. And then last but not least, another great indication can be taking a look at internships that lead to full-time offers. What does that statistic look like if you're able to gain that information? So having strong access to very supportive career services is really essential as you go through the consulting recruiting process. We talked a little bit about academic opportunities. So just to maybe drill down on that a bit, thinking through the curriculum for the program, is the MBA program that you'll be focused on so strict, for lack of a better word, that you won't have the opportunity to maybe cater your curriculum to what you're interested in? If you want to do healthcare consulting, for example, are you limited in not being able to maybe focus on that? So think through, is this MBA program going to offer me the right academic opportunities to do the kind of consulting work I'm interested in? Most MBA programs, you'll have most likely a core curriculum and then the opportunity to do electives or a major, but think about what that would look like for you. Having the opportunity to focus on courses in strategy, management, leadership, analytical work, those kinds of things can be really important to have as you consider consulting. Another great thing to take advantage of, which a lot of MBA programs will offer, is fieldwork, practical projects, and really the opportunity to get hands-on experience with a real-world client. You can usually do that as part of a class or maybe through the consulting club, where you have the opportunity to really get a feel for what it's like to work as a consultant. You may think it sounds really appealing to do consulting, and then once you get into the nitty-gritty of the work, maybe you find out, hey, it's not really for me. But getting that experience prior to maybe an internship or to a full-time role, that can be really helpful. So most schools will offer you that, but take a look and see. That can be a great thing that you can take advantage of. And then, of course, exposure to diverse industries and clients. Larger programs may give you more access. So thinking through that, is that suitable for you? Or are you really interested in a smaller program where you have a little bit more of a intimate experience getting to know the community, maybe with a curriculum that's a little more fixed as opposed to flexible? Don't force yourself to pursue an MBA program that really isn't for you. The culture and the fit can be so important as you consider an MBA program. And again, keeping in mind that consulting companies will recruit from all of the top programs and beyond. As I mentioned, we did a good job of developing relationships with smaller schools, with HBCUs, with women's colleges, with other sort of non-obvious, perhaps, feeder schools to the consulting companies. So just because you're not at Harvard doesn't mean you won't have awesome opportunities to pursue consulting. But think about the academic opportunities that the MBA that you're interested in will provide you, and how that will help support you in your consulting recruiting and work when you're actually practicing as a consultant. And then lastly, just to touch on the importance of the case method. So certainly for like McKinsey, BCG, other companies, being very, 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 very well rehearsed in the case method is incredibly important. So the opportunity to study cases through an MBA, certainly you'll have those. The opportunity to practice cases through the consulting clubs, to maybe work one-on-one and get some coaching with your fellow students. I can't emphasize enough how important it is. We'll talk a little bit more about how to prepare for the interview process, but having the opportunity through classes, through extracurricular activities, through sort of any resource that you can take to work on casing is incredibly important through the recruiting process. Okay, so before we wrap up and take your questions, we talk a little bit about some tips on preparing for consulting recruiting. So one thing I was maybe not surprised, but interested to learn as I worked as a recruiter at McKinsey, is that we would really start the recruiting process a few months before the MBA program even began for incoming MBA students. So for example, at Wharton, the MBA program starts in August with preterm. We would start reaching out to incoming MBA students in May. We would host online events in June. So be sure that you're participating in those events. I think some people would say, "Oh, I'm not ready. I'm not sure." There's no obligation in the early pre-MBA summer recruiting opportunities. It's really just the opportunity to learn about the firm. So I would encourage you, as once you get into your MBA program of choice, take advantage of all of those resources. Don't sort of assume that you don't need to get involved. It can be so helpful for you. And really, again, if you're thinking about consulting, but you're not totally sold, it's a great place to start in some of that pre-MBA networking. Another important thing to do, and will be really crucial as you actually apply and are interviewed for jobs, is polishing your resume and thinking through the examples you might talk about from, let's call it the personal part of the interview. Examples from your leadership experience, examples from maybe leading diverse teams, other examples from personal life, maybe leading clubs or student activities. We had quite a few candidates that came from the military background, thinking through examples there in terms of leadership. So kind of getting your wheels turning before you start the MBA on what sort of examples can I be thinking about? Because a lot of those pre-MBA programs will offer you the opportunity to kind of do like a practice interview, something like that. So it's a good thing to take advantage of, and sort of talk through those examples, have that kind of sort of practicing, in addition to working on your resume, having maybe a friend who's been in consulting take a look at it, utilizing the services of your career management and consulting club. So important. Sort of stepping back, really, and this should have been my first bullet, is researching firms and knowing your why and where. Uh, Again, MBB, amazing organizations, but you can't, it's like sort of so obvious. Harvard is an amazing program and McKinsey is an amazing company, but why do you want to be at those schools? What can you, or why would you want to be at any school? And why would you want to work at any consulting company? And that specific one in particular. So think about why you want to be at X firm. Why their work appeals to you, what kind of work. Do all of that research and review the website in its entirety for the MBA program and attend info sessions and all of those events. Don't just assume that because they're highly ranked programs or organizations that they speak for themselves. You need to speak to why they're the right fit for you. Another important thing to be thinking about when you recruit for consulting is where you want to be located geographically. So many firms will recruit through offices. You're hired through an office. So whether it's Chicago or London or wherever the case may be in terms of your geographic location in the world, you'll want to have a good reason for why you want to be in that location. So if it's London because you have a network there, because you've had maybe done some work there, you have some really compelling reasons for why London or why Chicago. You want to have that ready for when you go through the recruiting process, because the office locations will want to know, why do you want to work? I know you want to be at McKinsey, but why do you want to be in this office in particular? That can be really important to be prepared for. So why that firm and where, and why do you want to be in that specific office and that location? We talked a little bit about case prep. So get a jump start on that. Any of the resources that are out there, McKinsey had a lot of information on their website that was publicly available that you can sort of get started about what's their interview process like? How much time should I spend preparing? Once you start to go through the interview process, or I should say the recruiting process for McKinsey, you'll have access to case prep on their website, which is very robust. But certainly you would have access to consulting clubs and all of that preparation that you would get through your colleagues in career management. So I can't emphasize the case prep enough, and making sure you take advantage of all of those opportunities. You would hate to go through the process and not be successful, knowing had you just prepared a little more, you probably would have been. And to that point, also working on your mental math through the interview process. Once you're invited to interview, you'll most likely work through a case, and there'll be math involved. So brushing up on those quick quant skills, logic, analyzing the math, things of that nature. Doing a little bit of just kind of, again, getting your wheels turning once you're admitted to your MBA and you're starting to think about consulting. That can be a helpful thing to do. I touched on sort of your examples for the behavioral piece of the interview. Utilizing the STAR method can be a great way to do that. Thinking through your situation, the task, your action, and the result. That is a great way to frame your answers for behavioral, especially because you most likely have limited time. So you'll want to think through, okay, how can I hit on these major points, talk about the impact that I've had, and get to the point in a fairly short amount of time. So thinking through behavioral interview prep, thinking about your examples, and framing it within the STAR method can be really helpful. And lastly, prepare, prepare, and prepare some more. I said that earlier about the case prep. It's absolutely, I think recruiting for consulting is one of those things where you do have to do all of your due diligence, all of your research, all of the taking advantage of the networking events, building community at the firm you'd like to work at, getting to know the colleagues that you would be working in, and then doing all of the case, math, behavioral preparation. The activities, I know there's so much going on, especially in the beginning of an MBA program, but taking advantage of the events, opportunities, and hopefully some preparation that the consulting firms will offer MBAs as you recruit is really, really helpful and really, really important as you go through the process. So don't be overwhelmed. If you put in the hard work, I'm hopeful that you'll be successful as you go through it. So just some tips to prepare and to be thinking about even at this stage while you're doing your research for your MBAs on how to prepare for consulting. Okay, so what should your next steps be? We talked about researching the firms that you're interested in. Definitely encourage you to do that. Research the MBA programs, of course, that have strong outcomes in consulting, strong relationships with consulting companies. Engaging with current students and alumni can be really helpful as you go through information sessions. So many MBA programs will offer you the opportunity to chat one-on-one with a maybe a second-year student who's helping out admissions, do a coffee chat. Please, please, please take advantage of those and ask them, hey, or you could even request, I'm interested in consulting. Could you pair me with somebody who maybe has done an internship or is coming from consulting, and pick their brain? Is this program, do you think this program is a good fit for somebody interested in consulting? If you're coming from consulting, what tips might they have for you as you go through the recruiting process? So engage early, even now with alums and current students on consulting. And start preparing your applications. As I said, researching both the MBA programs and the firms you're interested in. Definitely doing your research is so important because it will help you understand, is this the right program for me? And then as you go to write your MBA essays, your applications, you'll come sort of armed with, okay, these are the elements that make X program distinctive, and you'll want to incorporate that into your MBA applications. And similarly to that, you'll want to do the same thing for consulting. Okay, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, these are globally recognized companies, but why do I want to be at this organization? So taking your time to do your research. So when you go to apply and you go through the recruiting process, you're already armed with that information so that you're ready. You've got a jump start on why you want to be at that chosen MBA program or consulting company. Okay, so lastly, before I take your questions, and thanks so much, we have a couple of questions in the chat session. Just to tell you a little bit about admissions consulting and what I do with Accepted. So I work with clients all over the world interested in full-time MBA, executive MBA, part-time, all kinds of MBA programs, as well as other graduate students. And I'd certainly be happy to hear from any of you if you're interested in getting support for your MBA applications. For Accepted, the company that I'm affiliated with, we have over 70 years of experience combined with admissions committee experts. I'm in a team of about 6 or so former MBA directors. So it's a great organization to think about pairing with if you're looking for somebody who's really been a gatekeeper of admissions, because all of our colleagues have really been in those kinds of roles. Accepted was founded in 1994, so we've been around for almost over 30 years at this point. In terms of how our approach is, it's very individualized, and we don't do a lot of, if you met with me, you'd be working with me. It's a lot of one-on-one connections. We work really closely with our candidates. We have a small base that we work with really closely. We have a lot of free resources on our website. So if you're sort of thinking about using an admissions consultant or you're not quite sure, great place, just like with MBAs and with consulting companies, is to start on the website. Take a look at we have a blog post, I should say, where we have almost daily updates on MBA programs, essays, tips, all sorts of things. Podcasts, which are great. My colleague, Linda Abraham, who founded the company, she does amazing podcasts where she interviews directors of admission at all the top schools all over the world. Great to listen to those. Sample essays, all kinds of things you can take advantage of. And lastly, we offer free 30-minute consultations. So if you're sort of thinking about admissions consulting, getting in some support, you're not totally sure where to start, no obligation. You can schedule a free 30-minute session on our website. Okay, and just a little bit of information here. You could reach out to us at accepted.com. And I think I'll put my email too as well in the chat so you have access to that. Okay, I think we're probably ready to wrap up. Happy to hear from any of you via email. Again, my email is kara@accepted.com. And thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to hearing from you and wish you the best of luck as you go through the recruiting process for MBA, the application process, and consulting one day down the line. Good luck. Thank you.